Good evening,
I'll
everyone.
start sharing.
I'll do the introduction part. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 25th edition of Guru Manthan. Guru Manthan, as you know, is being organized by the Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development. Our mission is to develop human and social capital to towards building a resurgent India. So we focus on enhancing the potential of individuals and institutions across the development sector. Guru Manthan is a platform to discuss, debate, share, and learn from each other's experiences, especially for teachers, and also to present diverse perspectives and practices in the field of education from across the world. This series was envisioned to be a series of 50 lectures and interactions with educationists and thinkers. Started on 1st August. Uh, when we did start, we didn't plan beyond 5 lectures, and we are already at the halfway mark. And I'm pretty sure we'll actually kind of run out of number of weeks to for all educationals to be able to share their experience here. So starting in August, we have had some very interesting lectures, very diverse topics being discussed. Professor Gurraj, Dr. Gurraj Karjagi, Professor Sridhar, Mr. Anurag Beher, then Dr. Kasturi Rangan addressed all of us on Teachers' Day. Then Mr. Anil Swarup, the MHRD Secretary, Dr. Ananta, Professor Annamalai. Professor Katimani spoke about the entrepreneurs communities. We had a discussion on teachers and technology last month, and now we are in the 6th month, discussion number 25, where we have with us Dr. Gopal Krishna Joshi, the Executive Director of the Karnataka State Higher Education Council. Before his tenure as the Executive Director, he was also teaching at the KLE Technological University in Hubli. He comes with a very, should I say, grounded experience in implementing the problem-based learning pedagogy. And we look forward to hearing your experiences, sir. And as usual, we will follow the breakup of a 25-minute lecture followed by another 25 to 30-minute moderated Q&A, where Ramesh and myself will be picking up questions from the chat box. And then towards the end, you will be giving another couple of minutes to maybe 2-3 minutes of closing remarks, and we'll try to finish at 8 p.m. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Can you all see my screen and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And very good evening to all of you, and my thanks are due to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences and understanding of PBL today. Please note that my understanding of PBL is limited to my experimentation in a variant of PBL practice in engineering education space. We are educating Generation Z who enter the portals of our institution, and we equip them so that they become successful in the world, which today is described as VUCA world. VUCA standing for, V for volatility, U for uncertainty, C for complexity, and A for ambiguity. That's how today's world is described. And if you look at the characteristics of Generation Z, these are my observations. They are native internet generation learners. They are products of nucleus families. They're more comfortable with gadgets than with humans. They're products of affluence, born with multiple choice. They have more information and less experience. haste, lack of patience, instant gratification. These are the characteristics very typical of Generation Z. And because we are into education, we better know the dynamics in skill space. This slide displays data from World Economic Forum report. Please observe the change in order and entry of new skills between 2018 and 2022. Complex problem solving, which was in number 2 in 2018, it has gone down. And I want you to observe declining skills of 2022. And I would like to give a pause here. And urge you all to look into the kind of learning experiences that we create to our children and what kind of skills are they giving by the end of their learning experiences, which we describe as outcomes. Please look at these declining skills. You get to, it's a kind of soul searching, that will happen here. While designing learning experiences for our students, we need to consider the dynamics in knowledge space, be aware of learners and their learning preferences, and the changing world and its concerns. Our conventional pedagogy attempts to do knowledge transfer through mostly lecturing mode. It has several limitations. A few of them I have listed here. It is instructor-centered and instructor-directed. I call it as synchronous because learning is assumed to happen when both student and learner, they come together. And learning is limited by examination because the purpose is that. And one size fits all kind of an approach which thoroughly ignores the learning style preferences of students. Ignores students' motivation. It fails to address wide spectrum of students' capabilities in the context where we are positioning ourselves and creating the learning experiences. It's mostly focused on lower order thinking skills, ignoring higher order thinking skills. When I'm saying this, I would like to draw your attention to Bloom's taxonomy, revised Bloom's taxonomy to be more precise, which that to particularly the cognitive domain, which talks about classification of learning in 6 levels. Bottom being remembering, then being understanding. The third level from the bottom is applying. The fourth level, evaluating, analyzing. Fifth is evaluating, and sixth level is creating. The bottom 2 levels, they are called lower order thinking skills, and the bottom 3 levels, and the top 3 levels are called higher order thinking skills. And when you carefully study the kind of learning experiences that we create and the way we assess our students, our focus is on remembering, understanding, and to some extent application, applying. And the focus of both the learner and the instructor is on assessment of learning. Let me clear this. When I'm saying assessment of learning, I'm referring to the term-end examination, which is also called as summative assessment. But actually, we are supposed to be more focusing on formative assessment or continuous assessment, which essentially is assessment for learning. So that is where, through mentoring, through periodic reviews and mentoring, we help learner become better learner. So these are the limitations of conventional, pedagogies. Education theory says that students learn better when they are connected to knowledge to a context. I have personal experience that I put a lot of effort in building a context and inviting my students into that context, so that learning starts becoming automatic. So students learn better when they are connected to knowledge through a context. So how do we build learning context for students? Please read the content of this slide. This is where I introduce you to PBL. The principal idea behind PBL is that the starting point for learning should be a problem, a query, or a puzzle that the learner wishes to solve. Please note here, it is about freedom to learner. The problem, a query or puzzle that the learner wishes to solve becomes the center. Friends, every experience need not result in learning. Experience followed by reflection results in learning. Please look at this. Whatever I have spoken just now, the statement that I made just now, it is done in the context of the content of this slide, which I have shown here. Careful inspection of methods which are permanently successful in formal education reveal that they depend for their efficiency upon the fact that they go back to the type of situation which causes reflection out of school in ordinary life. They give pupils something to do, not something to learn. And if the doing is of such a nature as to demand thinking or the intentional noting of connections, learning naturally results. This is what I told you. The whole idea is context and connection. If we are able to connect the learner through the context, then learning naturally happens. Look at this definition of PBL. It's a process of acquiring, understanding, knowledge, skills, and attitudes in the context of an unfamiliar situation and applying such learning to that situation. It is beautifully said. If you get into outcome-based education of curriculum design, there the outcome is defined as a statement of observable student behavior which represents the knowledge, skills, and attitude that he gains through the learning experience. That's what it is referring to. And if you connect this to Bloom's taxonomy, you will start seeing the bottom through levels, which I referred to 5 minutes ago. And when I see student engagement in a classroom, in a typical learning context, this is how I have understood. In typical lecture-based approach, It is passive and it is limited to knowing and understanding. Those of you who know active learning and such things, Kali-Nali kind of things, it is active involvement of students and it is joyful learning. And when you go to PBL and service learning as pedagogies, the experience is immersive and it is both joyful and purposeful. And this particular pedagogy that I'm referring to, both PBL pedagogies, both PBL and service learning, they are most useful, especially in the context of adult education. What are the characteristics of PBL? There are 6 listed here. Learning is initiated by a problem, and problems are based on complex real-world situations. Please note once again, we really need to understand the meaning of complex. What is meant by a complex problem? In fact, in problem solving literature, you get to know there is a continuum. The complexity continuum. One end, it starts with well-defined problems, then goes towards broadly defined problems, and then finally complex problems. I can give you an example. Most of our exercise problems that we give at the end of the chapter, where you give the problem with all the required data, and the methodology is already known to the student, and the solution is unique, irrespective of how many people attempt to solve that problem. That is one end of the curriculum, one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is the very nature of the problem is that it is ill-defined. You really need to struggle to understand what it really means and scope it properly. It might involve talking to multiple stakeholders, and it requires multidisciplinary skills to solve the problem, unlike the earlier problem where disciplinary skills are enough, one discipline skill is enough. And then another beauty is there need not be one solution. There will be multiple solutions for the problem. That is complex problem. I am sharing this because we need to rightly interpret these things so that we are able to create right kind of learning context to our students. And all information needed to solve the problem is not given initially. The students identify, find and use appropriate resources. This is where lifelong learning, which is one of the mandates of education, is introduced in this pedagogy. And students work in permanent groups, unlike our typical conventional classrooms. The learning is active, integrated, cumulative, and connected. Please note this. The learning is active, integrated, cumulative, and connected. There are 3 dimensions of theoretical principles of PBL, friends. The first dimension is the problem, the second is the content, and the third is the team. With respect to problem, please note that learning is organized around the problem, and it is a central principle for development of motivation. Students, in fact, educational psychology says the biggest differentiator in student success is student motivation. So, problem is the biggest attraction to student. He has chosen to solve the problem. Obviously, he has he has adequate motivation to solve it and learn through that. And the problem is the starting point for the learning processes, and it serves as basis of learning. When it comes to problem types, one end, you have realistic problems picked up from laboratory, picked up from real life. And the other end, you have theoretical problems which are cooked by teachers or instructors. And in between, there is something called a lab where, we have problems which are not authentic workplace or societal problems. They are pre-authenticated problems. So that is also another possibility. Simulation, these days, gaming, simulation, and several things are there. There, people try to bring it, introduce, this. Then it is integrated in the problem approach. Then let me come to the second dimension. That is content. When I talk about content, it is concerned with two factors here. One is interdisciplinary learning, which is relating to the dimension of knowledge as a solution to the problem formulation, and it may span across traditional subject-related boundaries and methods. I will tell you, friends, this makes huge difference to the way we deliver our knowledge to students. In fact, my personal experience is, 25 years I have taught as an individual instructor. But when I started doing this, we realized that it is all team teaching. It is not an individual teaching. It's because the knowledge and skills required to solve a problem, an individual may not have it. That is one of the major reasons. At least in my context, that was the reason. And all real life problems require multidisciplinary skills. And how do we make our learners appreciate this? From an interdisciplinary approach in our learning, we take them towards multidisciplinary approach. Okay? Then what is the second element is exemplary practice. It is concerned with ensuring that the students' learning output is exemplary in terms of framework of the objectives. This is absolutely important. And the third element is the team. In the previous slide, I did tell you that, students work in team. Social learning or team-based learning is the first element here. It specifies that the majority of the learning processes take place in groups and teams. Those of you who are interested, you may know more about this through educational literature. The higher order thinking skills happens through co-construction. And it is student-centered and self-directed. Please note here, earlier I spoke to you our conventional pedagogy where it is instructor-centered and instructor-directed. Whereas here, student takes control of learning. It is around him and it is directed by him. It indicates the ownership of the learning process and especially the formulation of the problem. And personal competencies are therefore implicitly developed in order to handle the group cooperation processes. So this is very, very important. So these are three dimensions of theoretical principles of PBL. Having known this, let me take you to the next part of my session. Here, I would like to speak to you about many variations in PBL. See, so far I purposely did not expand the word PBL, but please know PBL, it means problem-based learning. It means project-based learning. It means problem-based project-oriented learning, if you look at the literature available, you will realize that there are communities who are practicing their own variations of these things, and there are people who use them interchangeably. I want you to know all these things, right? So whether PBL means it is project problem-based learning or project-based learning, or it is project problem-based project-oriented learning. So this is what we need to understand. Look at this. The understanding of educational principles will vary from department to department, and these variation and community practice. When I say department to department, I'm referring to practicing communities, and these variations will affect aspects of the program, including the implementation and curriculum formulation. It could be due to different ways in which you define themes. Themes describing various types of problems is one approach. Themes directed towards certain subjects is another approach. In fact, the course that I designed, I looked at subject. For me, systems think multidisciplinary. My thinking was, multidisciplinary skills I wanted to give to my students. So it was around that I built my course. The choice of projects can be based on open or more controlled problem formulations depending on educational objectives and understanding of problem-based. There are people who give closed problems. There are people who give open problems. When I say open, the student is left to himself to scope it, acquire skills to solve it, and solve it. When it is closed, everything is well defined. The problem is well defined, the process is well defined, and the student is given all the support to do it himself. And the definition of a problem can vary between professional areas. When I say professional areas, in medical field, how PBL is practiced, please note here, PBL is wide. It is widely practiced from historic times in the field of medicine, dilemmas, social discrepancies, or an issue calling for an engineering solution. It can be anything. And the definition of various phases of the project, which may vary depending on the subject in question. This is another thing. And lastly, the relation between courses and project will depend on the understanding of knowledge, traditions, and culture of various departments, friends. All these things are responsible for variations in PBL. Now, let me take you to what is known as project-based learning. In this context, I'll introduce you to what is known as project-based learning. You see one definition which says that it is extended inquiry process structured around complex, authentic questions and carefully designed products and tasks. While problem-based learning is focused on process, the project-based learning is focused on product or solution. The difference between problem-based and project-based learning, they are not very clear even today. They are often used interchangeably. Why do we use project-based learning? This pedagogy results in improved understanding of concepts and theories, improved life skills such as problem solving, collaboration, time management, and understanding of real-world applications. Friends, I would like to tell you one thing here, that cognitive skills and non-cognitive skills. This is how you classify skills. Cognitive acquisition of cognitive skills, it tapers as we grow further, as we grow old. Whereas non-cognitive skills, it continues further. And if you know, for success, non-cognitive skills play a very important role. And project-based learning or problem-based learning, it beautifully blends both these skills in the learning context. Improved responsibility, self-direction, communication, and creativity. These are, guaranteed through this approach. Improved understanding of learning, how to learn. That is lifelong learning. That is another important thing. And content and knowledge acquisition as such, some more research is needed here. So these are obvious reasons for which project-based learning is used. When you look at PBL teaching practices, these are the points that we all should know. Design and plan, aligning to standards, building the culture, managing the activities, scaffolding student learning, assessing student learning, and engaging and coaching them. These are the teaching practices that make it PBL. If you integrate all these things into your pedagogy, then you can call it as PBL. And to a varying degree, the whole diversity in practice is, all these are practiced in varying degrees by different communities. What are essential project design elements? Look at this. There are 8 project design elements that I have listed, and in subsequent slides, I'll be explaining these things briefly. Key knowledge and understanding and success skills, challenging problem or question, sustained inquiry, authenticity, student voice and choice, reflection, critique and revision, and public product. These are 8 essential project design elements. If you use all these things, then you can call it as PBL pedagogy. Let me first tell you about key knowledge and understanding. It talks about application to real world experiences and creating high quality public products. Please know that in your learning context, you need to interpret this. And then I have already spoken about 21st century skills, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and self-management. These are skills which are otherwise ignored thoroughly in our learning while designing learning experiences. Then we need to give challenging problem or question. I have spoken to you from closed-ended problem like exercise problem to open-ended problem. Remember, we must give students problems that challenge them, but it should not defeat them. And sustained inquiry is very important. It is long-term reflection, deep analysis, and identification of resources. Please note here, this cannot happen. Project-based learning cannot happen in one session. Whereas I know problem-based learning, which is practiced in one Republic Polytechnic Singapore, where every day the students start with a problem. It is one day, one problem kind of an approach. That is how it is practiced in Republic Polytechnic Singapore. Authenticity is another important element here. When I say authenticity, I am referring to authenticity of the problem. You cannot bring synthetic problems to classrooms. You must bring real world problems and actual tools, and the solutions should impact community, and real issue that matters to students is what is referred to in terms of authenticity. And please note here, under students' voice and choice, the very definition says it is the student who chooses the problem to solve. It is not teacher. Then comes reflection. Very important. I told you earlier that not every experience followed by reflection results in learning, not otherwise. Right? Critiquing and revision, the focus is on formative assessment or assessment for learning. So periodic critiquing and reviewing both by instructors and peers, student voice and peers, is very important in this in this pedagogy. Then comes an exhibition of the solution in public, either in the form of product, poster, or the POC. So that is how you create the experiences. The 8 elements put together describe how you practice PBL. So in fact, the same things I have listed here. The project-based learning pedagogy, it is chosen for multidisciplinary settings, whereas problem-based is chosen in single subjects. And longer projects beyond week, 15 days, 1 semester, whereas in problem-based it is short-term projects. It could be 1-day project, something like that. Okay, so this is where I end my session. I have tried to give you very brief introduction about PBL as I have understood it, and now I'll stop. I know I have exceeded the time given to me by 6 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I think you laid out the pedagogy part very clearly out for the audience to kind of mull over it for some time. To start off, I had a couple of questions. One is a lot in several of our schools, we do talk about experiential learning and the classrooms being joyful, and there are lots of these adjectives which are used to describe a 21st century classroom. Or there's also a mention of all of these in the NEP as well.
Yeah.
Now, every time when we take these slightly more explorative approaches inside the classroom, one of the critical or one of the challenges that teachers face is, where do we have the time for all this? Time for all this in terms of time required for preparing and planning for these, as well as time for completing the syllabus. What's your take on that?
In fact, okay, I'll give you I'll share one incident that happened between me and my colleague. See, we have been practicing this pedagogy since 2015. Since 2015, academic year starting from 2015. 14 of my colleagues, drawn from 7 engineering departments, they came with me, and then we designed one course. I was asking my colleague, if we put similar effort in all the courses that we are teaching to our students, what would happen? His answer was, we will cover the whole story of engineering with 50% of subjects, sir. The remaining 50% of the subjects are useless. Friends, actually, if you think, when a student starts learning after I stop teaching, which is how we attempt to estimate, I think that's where the problem lies. If I change my position that I'm an enabler and together we learn, then this shift in paradigm, it influences our mindset and we start becoming more useful. You know what? Who decides what how much to learn, what to learn? In the context of the problem, the student should decide ideally. And my experience is, our effort in terms of preparations, it is 4x. It is 4x. If you are in a team, if you are alone, it is impossible. It is impossible. Course design is not easy. But students learning, you don't worry. You come with me, I will show you. In fact, that's what I do. In PBL, you should exhibit the products and share experience. Don't talk. So I don't like to talk much. You come, I'll show you in field what happens. That's how I'm able to win people.
Thank you, sir. I think there's a couple of questions that were connected to this. I think one of the questions also asked about how do we prepare teachers for problem-based learning. The other question I also had is that our most of our schools, our whole system is geared towards preparing children for clearing that 1, 2, 3 hour examination, not towards continual or continuous learning. So there is this pressure. Most schools have to conform to that pressure of getting children. How many children can get 80%? How many at 90% kind of a thing. Even the reporting happens on that basis. Given that reality, how do we ensure that we actually make this shift happen? Is it
once again, I will share my personal experiences.
sure.
Actually, when I designed this course in 2013, when I approached my vice chancellor, I said, I'm going to offer a course like this. He said, wait for 2 years. We become university. That day you start. Then when I took it to various, our academic system has its own process, board of studies, academic senate, and academic council. Everywhere I had a lot of questions. It's because I had striked off term and examination. In my course, there is no term and examination. 80% weightage is given to the intermediate reviews that we do of the projects that the students are doing. Okay, so there is no term and examination at all. Only 20% of the weightage is given to the last day exhibition. Last day of the semester, we conduct an exhibition. That's where, we assess him for the remaining 20% marks. Otherwise, 80% of the things are done, in this way. Intermediate assessment. That's where I said assessment for learning. It is not assessment of learning. Of learning, there is a huge difference. The way we assess students, the way we communicate results to students. It is not results. It is helping him improve. I will give you one example. All our grades are not concrete grades. Intermediate, we tell him, today we are giving you 7 on 10. But if you do these two things and come back, you have a chance to go to the next level. And this is what is my expectation. That's how you have to challenge student, work with him. And the beauty is that, sir, and NEP is proposing this. And there are going to be structural changes. There are going to be structural changes. There are going to be regulatory, changes to promote these things. But I want to tell you one thing. See, if you want to try something new, you should be ready to face challenges, including your own people who start hating you because there will be more work involved. But when it happens, you will enjoy it. You should come and see, even our tunes, they feel so proud that they are part of such a creation.
Sir, you were mentioning about demonstrating the work which you were able to accomplish in KLE. I think if you could share your experience as a teacher, how did you facilitate PBL in your course, along with maybe a few tidbits on how it can be implemented in a school? I think it will benefit the audience here.
Yeah. Actually, I have a presentation. I have a presentation which I can show, if that is okay for you.
Yes, yeah, we can.
But I'm not sure whether it answers your questions. But all that I want to. But while telling that story, maybe you will get some answers, and some more questions also you might get. This is a. Let me quickly tell you the context of this course. The context of this course is most of the students who make decision to join engineering, the decision is not well informed. It is taken either due to peer pressure or parental pressure. But after admission, another disaster happens. It is my personal experience. I think Praveen also agrees. You know, in 4 years of our stay in engineering school, no teacher tells you about what is engineering problem solving, and engineering design process, and multidisciplinary skills required in engineering problem solving, and the importance of teamwork and collaboration in successful execution of projects. Nobody tells us. It is we are left to ourselves. So in this context, I was just thinking as to how can I create a course and engage the students at first year level, where we let them know about all these things, so that they develop, they prepare themselves, and they develop expectations from this entire 4 years of their stay on my campus, and become better engineers. So that is the story. So I'll just quickly tell you, okay, this course is following,
Sir, I think you
PBL
need to share the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm not able to share. Okay. Fair. Mm. 1 minute. Huh? Can you see this screen?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So I was just telling you about the context. So let me tell you, the course has several modules. The course has several modules, and we follow PBL pedagogy. The course is co-designed, and it is taught by a multidisciplinary team of teachers. And active and collaborative learning is what we are seeing here. Praveen, I have not written experiential learning, because in the context of education, they have different meanings. So earlier, since we are all teachers here, I request you all, please don't limit your reading to content of the subject that you are teaching. Because teaching is your teacher, your identity is teachers. You better spend some time in knowing literature related to education. That's how I have learned and improved myself, and attempted to become a better teacher. Okay, I request all of you to do that. So you will see, okay, if you attend my course, these are course outcomes. We practice outcome-based education. So my approach, you will see this. If you attend my course for 1 semester, this is what I promise you end of the semester. At the end of the semester, you will be able to do all these 6 things, friends. That is course outcomes. Okay. So since we follow PBL pedagogy, project-based learning pedagogy, I am going to show you the whole story. You should relate it to what I presented to you in the first half of my system. The students come to, after admission, they come to class. The first class, we form teams, and each student is allowed to pick up one problem, one need statement from a set of need statements, that are displayed to him. I have shown you one example. And these need statements are formulated. These need statements are written in the context of our course. Multidisciplinary thinking we want our students to develop in the very first year of engineering. So the example is cutting and stripping wire to required length is, it involves fatigue and it consumes a lot of time. And there is need to automate the process of cutting and stripping of wires. This is the need statements are given. Then we help students carve out problem definition from this need statement. When we say this, we want students to identify objectives, functions, constraints. So when students do that, please see here, for the given need statement, how the problem statement is carved out by one batch of students. I am just displaying the artifact, the portfolio of one particular student batch. He says, the team says, to build an automated wire cutting and stripping machine, which should precisely cut and strip the given wire. It should be safe to use. Objectives. It should strip 1 centimeter length of insulation off the wire on both sides. Functions. Length of the wire without stripping should be provided by the user, and diameter should be 0.35 mm only. The cost should not exceed 3,000 rupees. Constraint. So like this, the student carves out problem statement. Please note, this is absolutely important. And those of you who have worked in problem solving space, you will know that understanding the problem is equal to finding 50% of the solution. So they carve out problem statement and then they go to solution space. From problem space, they go to solution space. This is where, we ask them to generate concepts, multiple concepts, and then they have to select one concept. Please know here, till PUC2, the students are used to solving well-defined problems. Speed and accuracy matter there. From that, we bring them to real world, where we say for a given problem, there can be multiple solutions existing and best exists in context. So that is how 4 concepts are shown here. It is very difficult, friends, to generate this. Now I want to tell you why we are, recognized in engineering education. Innovation is one most abused word. What we do, how do we promote innovation? When you ask, all students are used to solving problems, and the first solution that they bring is the best solution that they get. If you ask your students to come with 2 solutions, the difficulty starts, and we insist that they have to come with 4 solutions. And how do we check whether, and when we looked at these solutions, the 3rd solution was sibling, the 4th solution was a half brother. Then, you start seeing all these problems. So how do we promote innovation? Promoting innovation is through introducing diversity. And how did we create diversity? By changing context, by changing form, by changing functions. We started helping them understand how innovation can be brought into identifying solutions. Please know, friends, teachers have to do this. All these buzzwords that people use, how do I bring them into my classroom learning experiences? That is our job. We have to do that, and we are greatly successful here. And then they have to do concept selection. When they do concept selection, here also once again they prioritize the objectives, and then they use pairwise comparison chart, and the selection is well-informed selection. It is not based on like. Then they do product architecture. Product architecture, once again, we have told you what does it mean. Clustering of functional structures, identification of subsystems, interaction between each subsystem, geometric layout concept. So these are the, for one selected concept, they write the function tree and then cluster the functions. They identify the architectures. These are 3 architectures. And then when they get into actual building, we introduce prototype building using Scrum, an agile practice. Multiple sprints they do. They actually do the design, then do the programming, and they actually build it. This is end of sprint 1, wire cutting and stripping unit. In sprint 2, they once again moving and storing unit, design, electronics, programming, and then they integrate the sprint 2 with sprint 1. This is the regression testing, unit testing and regression testing. and then sprint 3. This is how it happens, friends. They build a prototype. And they build a prototype, that's where I said they do an exhibition. Last day of the semester, they do an exhibition. This is how you see students doing these things. And this is the story, friends, actually. And you please see here, review 1, review 2. For paucity of time, I don't want to speak much. Please do. There are 4 reviews that happen here, and all these reviews put together, they are intermediate reviews, and it makes 80% of the assessment. And these are all improvement grades where student can always come back, incorporate the changes that we have suggested him, and then he can improve the grade. And then only final day, they are evaluated for only 20% marks. And I want to tell you one thing, that in our course, there are no failures. There is no failure in our course. And all students get good grade. There is no manipulation. And this is where, I started understanding every soul is potentially divine. This is what Swami Vivekananda says. Education is manifestation of perfection within, they say. I mean, those statements have started making sense to me now, friends. And it has taken more than 30 years for me. You need not, you need not waste your time like that. You start working, and when you understand and work, your returns are more. So thank you. I don't know, whatever I have spoken so far, most of these things you will see in the theory that I spoke to you earlier.
Sir, one quick question. I think there are a few questions in the chat box where there is an apprehension that is this pedagogy really applicable at a school level where we have 10 to 16-year-olds, and would that be possible?
Yeah.
Would you want to address that?
In fact, I would like to answer this. Please note here, friends, my experience is in higher education, that to tertiary education in engineering. I am very clear. But then I have seen in schools it is being practiced. I have spoken to you about project-based learning variant. There is problem-based learning variant. Republic Polytechnic Singapore, they practice one problem per day. One problem per day approach. In the morning, the teachers allocate the problem, and they, through a structured way, they take them through experiences. At the end of the day, students write reflections and go. And then those reflections are evaluated and then communicated back along with improvement grades. It happens, it is possible. And I would like to share some literature through Praveen with all of you, where some school experiment examples are given. I will definitely share them with you. Subject-specific problems also can be taken. Physics, instead of starting life with a law, if you start with one problem which you have designed and then connect them to the concepts of physics, that is how people get connected to the to the concept through the problem. Then definite learning is possible. I will share some of the examples, some case studies I'll share through Praveen.
Thank you, sir. Now, one last question from my side is, are there cases where you have seen that PBL fails or PBL doesn't work? I think it's important to understand that as well.
Okay. I have not made a study on this. This is what I do. If I have to answer, either it has to be my personal experience or I have studied it and there is literature in support of my statement. I don't have such a study done, but I will share the challenges that I faced and where it is not working well. These are all anecdotal evidences. Wherever we have seen individual teachers working, it fails. Whether it is a course level PBL or it is program level PBL. You have to work in teams.
Yeah.
You want to teach students teamwork and you don't work in team. I don't know.
One remark before we move to the last question from Ramesh is we do have some a small group here in Mysore, a group of teachers. In our own limited understanding, we did try PBL in the school, and we have been fairly successful in terms of how students feel very excited about it. But we also failed to an extent that we didn't plan enough. And students shocked us with the ability with what they could achieve, and we didn't even anticipate that students will reach such levels. So we kind of hit a point where we were not ready to take it forward, while the students had gone much beyond what we were even imagining.
I fully agree with you. Actually, the success depends on how well you plan. And the planning is not by an individual. Please know, a course which we are delivering for that, which we deliver for 10th time. Every year we spend about 15 days in redesigning the course. 15 full days in redesign. 14 teachers sit together and design one course. And we don't have a textbook because it is very difficult to write a textbook for an evolving course like this. People do ask us, there is only one possibility, we should have a wiki. I fully agree with you. Lot of preparation is required. And scaffolding. You know what, you should believe in, what is your job as a teacher? To celebrate student success. What enablers are you creating in the process? Are you there at the terminal end to flag off a red sign and judge him, adjudge him as a failure, or you want to work for his success? This is the fundamental shift. Summative from term end examination to assessment for learning. The shift is you start working towards the success of your learners, not waiting for him to fail at the end. This is the shift that has to happen. And that's what is the beauty here. This pedagogy is beautiful, Praveen. It's just good.
Okay, so I just have one last question. I think we already way over time. No, just about the first slide. It's been still in my mind where you talked about the new generation of children who are digitally who have all of the privileges and other things. My concern is also are we also seeing a growing digital divide that is, and is there a real fear of the bottom of the pyramid falling off, and you have only a small group that is going to be part of all of these newer learning and all of that is happening? Do you think that is a real fear that we should also be addressing? Or
Actually, Ramesh, because I'm an engineer and I believe in this fact that technology can be a great game changer, and that accelerates the process of reaching the bottom of the pyramid. I have seen it in my lifetime. I'm more than convinced that it is possible. This divide is reduced because of technology. It is reduced, but please know, what are you looking at? If you look at World Economic Forum report, it says the gap between haves and have not is increased 9 times, which was 7x. Now it has become 9x. But then when it comes to, also observe, when it comes to meeting the basic prerequisites, empowerment and opportunities, it has increased. There is data in support of what I am saying now. I understand. I am equally concerned about it. But I genuinely believe that technology is a game changer. It will help us go to the bottom of pyramid. Sir, one mobile has made so much of change, sir. The deterrents here are teachers. If we can look at how transformations happened using technology because of COVID. People have done amazing innovations. Teachers, I have seen teachers doing amazing innovations and staying connected with, in terms of staying connected to students. It is possible, sir.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. I think a lot of food for thought for myself. In fact, as part of many of the capacity building programs that we do at VLead itself, I think there's a lot that I have actually taken out of your lecture today. There's much that we can actually work through and do. So thank you. It was wonderful. We can go to closing remarks, sir. Your final closing
Thanks
remarks.
for giving me the opportunity. Thanks for, I always, whenever I see you people, I get a feeling as to how can I be useful to these people? They are all doing such great works. Whenever I go with Jayanta, whenever I see Praveen, you and all these people, I sometimes feel helpless. So today I'm very happy that in some small way, you find me useful. Thank you for giving me this feeling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We did thoroughly enjoy your session. And in your new role in the State Higher Education Council, we are sure you will contribute a great bit towards engineering education and higher education as a whole for the state of Karnataka. And we do have several more questions which we will share with you, and we look forward for your responses and the other literature which you did mention that you will share.
Sure.
Thank you everyone for being a part of this wonderful evening. And next week we have a very interesting speaker, Mr. Shankar Musafir from UNESCO. He's a project officer in the Department of Curriculum Reforms based out of Kabul. And he has also written a very interesting book called A Letter to the Principal. It's a small book which you might enjoy reading. So do meet us next week. We will talk about the good, bad, and ugly of school education. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.